All right, so tonight, as I promised, spaghetti Rosalind's style, or more particularly Matt Madison's style, because my dad can't eat the noodles of a spaghetti sauce all that well. So, to replace the noodles in my spaghetti with ricotta meatballs, I'm using rigatoni noodles, which, as you can see, are short, round dish, and will be much easier for my father to eat. So, other than that, I'm using everything else that the menu called for. Okay, there we go. I had to find my thing. So let us deep more. There we go. Deep. Okay. I need 2 mixing bowls, a pan of boiling water, which is over there boiling even as we speak, and a medium-sized frying pan. Now, the first thing I was to do was to mince my garlic, which I went ahead and did, and separate it into 3 piles, because it's going to get used 3 times. Duh. All right, the next thing I need to do is stem and mince my parsley, which I have right here. Yay! And it looks pretty good and fresh this time, so I'm really kind of happy about that. So, to get on with the mincing. It's nice when all the leaves come at one end as opposed to being all up and down the thing. There we go. Means, hope I didn't disappoint you, Lynn. My friend Lynn was asking me how I was going to do this, and I told her that my dad was going to was thrilled when I told him. And she's like, well, what is it? And I said, you'll have to wait, Brew. Ha ha ha. Evil laughter. Because, well, surprises are good. As long as it's not a letter from the IRS. That's not a good surprise. Nobody likes to hear from the IRS. I don't think even the IRS likes to hear from the IRS, but anyway, so we are mincing the parsley here. And parsley minces in some ways easier than some of the harder ones because it cuts, and especially if it's fresh. Fresh parsley cuts really nicely. So I am very happy for that. Meanwhile, I think my water is boiling over there, so let me go check on it. Okay? Don't go away. All right, then after mincing my parsley, then I slice my bread in 2, which I just did, and of course throw the stems away. All right, so now they say to make the meatballs. So I take my hang on just a second. There. So I take my mixing bowl and I combine my meat the ricotta. Voila. The breadcrumbs. And just a second. All right. About half the parsley. 1/3 of the garlic. And 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Crumble, 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 crumble. Now you're an 1/8. Okay, fine. That was a 1/4. 2/8, make a 1/4. Half a teaspoon of pepper. And mix them together. So for this, we need to get our hands dirty. This is the old-fashioned and the best way to make meatballs, is to make them from scratch. Now, you can buy passable meatballs in Walmart, but for the best ones, you need to, like, make them. Until it's well mixed. Voila. Now, I need to divide and shape the mixture into meatballs. Now, they say 10. I found that, and they say about the size of a ping pong ball. I have found that this is generally a little bit too big. I like my meatballs a little bit smaller. You know what I'm saying? So I tend to go for, a 20-sided dice size. Those of you who don't play D&D probably don't know what I mean by that. But if you play D&D, hang on just a second. Actually, now that I compare it, this is a 20-sided dice. You roll this for just about any attacks or protections. This is a 25-sided dice, and looking at this, I realized that my meatballs are more of a 25-sided dice than a 20-sided dice. So, anyway, now that I have thoroughly confused you, let's get back to rolling meatballs. But anyway, I find that smaller meatballs work better because, well, there appear to be more of them, for one thing. And for another, they're easier to eat. You don't have to necessarily cut them in half in order to get them in your mouth. And if I made a ping pong sized one, well, you'd have to cut it up in order to eat it. And there's nothing wrong with cutting up a meatball, don't get me wrong, but if you're cutting up a meatball, you know, with everything, you know, it's better, I find, if you can eat the meatball without having to first dissect it. So, hence the reason that we will be having a lot more than 10 balls, and why the balls are going to be about the size of a 25-sided dice. Now, in just a little side note on D&D and role-playing games, because not all role-playing games are D&D. You have your 4-sided, 6-sided, 8-sided, 10-sided, 20-sided die. Those are your 5 main ones. You didn't know you were going to get a lesson on this. I know. Anyway, but then like 25, 30, 100-sided, these are more your specialty dice, and you don't usually use them. I say usually. It depends on who your game master is. During the spring, there's this wonderful, wonderful convention called Fear the Con that's made up of role-playing gamers, and they meet up in Missouri. And so if any of you are interested, I would suggest checking it out. It's on a podcast called Fear the Boot. Don't ask me about the name. If you have questions, ask my godson, because he probably knows them, or someone who actually is part of Fear the Boot. But Fear the Con is awesome, and I'm hoping very much to go this. Okay, cat freaked me out. I'm hoping to go this coming spring. So, that was not nice. That was seriously not nice. Freaked me the heck out. My cat, remember I mentioned she got into my ceiling the other night? Well, apparently she got into it again without my knowing it. And now she just jumped out of the ceiling. I don't scare easily, but I do startle, you know? And so, anyway, so for those of you who think that D&D is, a devil's game, it's not. It's no more dangerous than poker, you know, or just about any board game, because the only thing about D&D and other role-playing games is that they require you to use your imagination, and if you don't have an imagination, this can be difficult. So, anyway, meatballs! Now, I need to cook these little puppies, so we shall move. Alright, so, now my meatballs are cooking, and I'm going to cook them for about 9 minutes, you know, so that they get nice and brown on all the sides. And then I will remove them from the heat. So, where's my spatula? There it is. You also don't want raw meatballs. Hey, you guys, roll. I rolled a 20. Which, by the way, when you are trying to hit something in D&D and or not get hit, a 20 is generally a good number. again, depending on who your DM is, because some of them are just plain obnoxious. I had one game master that sent us in after this sparkly box, and after we got in it and got through it, the dungeon, and we got the box open, we realized that we had just gone through a dungeon in order to get the prize of the crackpot box. We were not amused. Alright, so I've added my marinara sauce and my garlic and I haven't put in a bunch of salt yet, but a little water. And now I'm letting it cook. I kind of forgot to turn on the thing. My pasta is cooking over here. My bread is cooking. So we're all pretty much on the right track here, so to speak. And put this along a little bit. May need to cook a little bit longer, but pretty sure other than that. Let's see. So after I've brought it to heat it up, yep, we're pretty much almost there. So just gotta let this cook, let that cook, and wait for my bread to end. So there we go. Alright, so I returned to my cooking area, or my prep area, to put my noodles in my bowls. The thing about pasta that I have learned is that it blows up. You know, you start with one small little handful, and the next thing you know, you've got a massive amount. I'm not quite sure why, but, you know, it just plumps. All right, where's my, there we go. Now, my meatballs and meat sauce. All right, and now my parsley and my cheese. I tend to like cheese. Can you tell? And finally, my bread. Whew. Now, this is what it was supposed to look like. This is what it does look like. Different, but I'm hoping that it will taste really good just the same. So, I'll be back. Okay, so the word on this one is it's very good. If the noodles had been a little bit more tender, this would have been good, but otherwise, very good. So, glad to have it for that.